Thanks everybody for coming. I do really appreciate it. Um, it is my sincere hope that I can share some things with you today, that some errors that I made that I can share with you and that you can learn from and hopefully try to avoid in your startup when you get going. Uh, a bit contrary to what Joanna had to say, my career has not been complete failures from day one. I've been an entrepreneur for about 20 years, and had a huge success starting a blog back in the year 2000, about the same time that Google got started. And as a result of starting before Google, they sort of implicitly trusted me for some reason as part of their algorithm. And so, back in about 2000, 2004, 2005, it was about the 3,000th busiest website in the entire world. I've had a couple of projects that I worked on in between that, but R17 is the first kind of startup that I did, not in private, among just sitting in my office doing nothing. This was very, very public. We raised a bunch of money, went through the Propel Launch 36 program, which some of you might be familiar with, and just want to really say that when I started, there was not a lot of public help out there for starting a business like there is today. So, I really do hope you take advantage of kind of this new environment where people are very willing to talk to you about how to get started. I really, really encourage you to reach out in any way to anyone you possibly can. So, my talk is sort of pointed towards a tech startup, someone who's primarily selling online, but I don't think it's really going to matter whether you're funded, which I was, or not funded. I think it's going to apply fairly equally across the board. Okay? So the story is, I had an idea that was born out of a previous company. And I ended up going to Propel ICT and applying to become part of their second cohort. And it was literally an idea drawn in the back of a napkin. I went in, I drew it out for every single team that came by and wanted to do an interview. I ended up getting into the second cohort, and it was about 6 months back then. I think it's about 3 or 4 months now. But every week we would focus on a different section of what you would be addressing if you're building a startup. So we started out with doing customer development, which is going out and talking to potential customers, picking their minds, and trying to learn from them. By the end, in the last day of Propel is a demo day where you get up and you tell this story, which culminates in a pitch, which was about 7 or 8 minutes long, and we were pitching to a gigantic room full of people, many of whom were investors. And the idea was that someone will hopefully like what you have to say and give you some investment money. So we ended up raising $400,000 based on an idea that was on a napkin 6 months before. So once we got started, it's kind of funny. The story really is we spent a couple of months trying to figure, okay, now what do we do? We've got some money, what do we do? We need a marketing guy to help us figure some of this stuff out. But within 2 months, something really, really interesting happened. It was a total fluke, really. I started receiving emails and messages in the morning saying, congratulations on selling your startup. What had happened was a gigantic e-commerce website had bought another company with whose name was very close to the nickname of my company. So people were very excited for me, and so I went to figure out what is everybody reading. Found this press release saying this giant company had bought this other startup. And really interestingly, it said this giant company is buying innovative companies who are outside because they can't innovate indoors. I thought, we're an innovative company. They could use what we're selling, because we were doing e-commerce, and the idea was basically we can make your e-commerce site much faster so you don't lose customers as they're going through the sales funnel. And you can also, hopefully, get a chance to upsell them along the way, sort of like what Amazon does. Amazon's very quick, gets a chance to sell you something before you change your mind, and also is very good at doing the upsell. So I reached out. I read through the press release was there, figured out, sort of reverse engineering, who the merger and acquisition fellow was, found out what his email address was through a process of elimination, like Steve.Mallett at big e-commerce company, Steve Mallett at e-commerce company, and everything in between, and explained, here's what we do, and here's why you should talk to us. Can we talk? As it turns out, it was Thursday afternoon, 4:45 at night, on the eve of the Friday, which is the start of the Canadian Thanksgiving. I get an email. It says, yes, I will meet with you. I click back right away. He doesn't tell me where he is or when we're going to meet. Okay, wait, where can we meet? What time can we get together? All Friday I sat around waiting for an email. I was checking email, F5, checked my email. Saturday morning rolled around. Okay, I was waiting, but I was hoping. Didn't get a message back. I said, okay, this guy said yes. I'm going to find where he is. I went back, did some detective work. I figured out where he was going to be on Monday or Tuesday, the next week. It turned out he was going to be at the startup that they had bought. It was in a little town outside of southern San Francisco. I booked a flight for Sunday, left for San Francisco Friday, stayed in the worst hotel I've ever seen in my life. Got on the Caltrain Monday morning, went down to where they were, and I hung out outside the Starbucks across the street waiting for him to say, I'm here. So all day Monday, didn't get a thing. I was terribly sick to my stomach with chai latte. Tuesday at 1 o'clock, he said, let's meet. I'm over here. And I wrote back, I'm across the street at the Starbucks. He says, great, come on over. I show up. I have nothing. I've got an iPad, a little mini iPad with a little video on it. I go in, I show him, here's your website without us, here's your website with us. While I'm going through the presentation, he's doing a BlackBerry thing to the guy he knows who's in Cambridge who needs what we're selling to them. And that's where it all goes wrong. The biggest mistake that you can make in a startup is not knowing your customers intensely. Knowing your customers very deeply. I, running R17, did not do enough customer development. What ended up really happening is going through Launch 36, had the idea, reached out to a couple people, had a couple lukewarm ideas. I changed what I was going to do based on that feedback, and then ended up finding some big name customers who said, yeah, you know, that is pretty cool. One was American Express. We had the Russian newspaper Pravda, who had turned into, I guess, what is now sort of a National Enquirer of Russia, who wanted to use our thing. So really kind of sexy, cool things that could go to the pitch day. And basically what happened was I had found enough validation for my idea that I now had a good story, and I subconsciously did not want to know anymore. I had fooled myself into thinking I had something because I was going to have a great story to tell investors at Demo Day. If I had done more digging in and talked to a lot more customers, what I probably, hopefully, would have figured out was if I was going to a gigantic enterprise company to sell, I probably would have figured out that the problem that I thought they had, which was that their website was really slow, was actually a symptom of a much larger problem that I couldn't begin to address. Their IT department happened to be a complete disaster. We could help them make their website faster with a team over here, but at the same time they had a team over here who wouldn't talk to each other and would undo any good work we did with this team. Yeah. So they actually ended up paying us a lot of money to sit around and do nothing for 3 months. They paid us almost as much money as we had raised from investors. And in the end, we could not help them. And they said, basically, we love your product, but can you just come fix all this stuff for us? And if you do, we'll probably just buy your company. So when it didn't work out, it absolutely broke my heart. I thought, this is the one. And I could have avoided all that time, wasted effort, heartache, if I'd gotten to know the customers much, 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 much better and not fooled myself. And there's a quote by Charlie Munger. He was the right-hand man of Warren Buffett. He says, above all, you must not fool yourself, and you're the easiest person to fool. Because you want to believe. If you're an entrepreneur, you have a sort of reality distortion field around you. You believe you can pull off the impossible a little bit, and so you have to be very careful. So mistake number one, not doing enough customer development. Seek out the problems and where your idea is not good, which is pretty tough. The biggest thing that is preventing you from knowing, not guessing, not making assumptions, is fear. Everybody has a comfort zone that the second they're about to stick their toe over, the amygdala, the lizard brain, way back here, becomes very scared. It can rationalize anything to you to convince you not to do that scary thing. There are salespeople who will go to a company and they will get all the resistance in the world and they will walk out with the sale. There are other salespeople who will go do the same thing and walk away without the sale. That's because the person who gets the sale typically has a lot more experience and is not afraid to do those extra things that were required to make that sale. So I'm not scared to stalk a Fortune 500 executive across the country. I'm not scared to sit up here in front of you guys. But public speaking is one of those things that is like the biggest fear that most people have. So I've done those things before and worked through those fears, and so now I am in front of you. So you really need to be able to seek out those things that your fear is preventing you from doing, which is making yourself vulnerable to customers. If you go with your idea, a lot of people are really not seeking to find out where their idea is weak. They're really trying to figure out if their idea is good. And if someone doesn't say that their idea is good, they move on to the next person instead of asking the hard questions. Why does my idea stink? Another huge fear point for me, and you guys might not have this fear point, was going through Propel. I had a mentor, someone who knew better than me, and I didn't listen to a word he said. I felt, for some reason, that I had to go through the motions of pretending I knew everything. Because if I didn't project some sort of strength, some sort of certainty about the idea, that when it came to talking to investors, they were going to say, that guy doesn't know what he's doing. We're not going to invest in you. The reality is, most investors know absolutely that you don't know what you're doing. If you think you know everything that you're doing, you're crazy. You're a crazy person. So when someone is telling you, your idea, I like the idea, here's something I think you should look at, instead of saying, no, I got that covered. Move on. We don't need to think about that. I got it. You really need to sit down and say, okay, what are you trying to say to me? Why am I wrong? Because when you accept that you may be wrong about certain things, you'll go and investigate, look for evidence. And it's a very hard thing for people to do. It's very scary. People don't generally go seeking for unvalidation. People are looking, Please accept me. Please think I'm smart. Please think I'm pretty. Please think I'm great. All this kind of thing. So there's a lot of fear in doing the customer development. The biggest fear, I think, is most people don't want to find out that their baby is ugly. I'm dead serious. Um, I am currently a mentor with Propel ICT, so that's the Launch 36, and it's amazing how many people will try to convince you that their idea is the best idea you've ever seen, and when you not people in Propel don't try to point out, this is stupid. They don't act that way. They try to get you to question some of your assumptions because they see maybe a hole that you haven't thought about, and people's shields just go up. No, this is the greatest idea ever. There's nothing absolutely wrong with it. Please, let's just push forward. There's a lot of fear of rejection. Nobody wants to pick up the phone and talk to a potential customer and have them say, I have no interest in that whatsoever. Why are you calling me? But there's a process you need to go through so you can find out who your actual customers are. One of my biggest fears with R17 was when I was doing the customer development and I found some big names who were very interested in what we were doing, was if I continue, this is subconsciously, mind you, I didn't realize I was doing it at the time, I didn't want to go talk to anybody else because my biggest fear was if all the other people I talk to tell me this is a bad idea, I can't pitch this at demo day. I have to go back to scratch. And all that work I put in was for nothing. It wasn't for nothing because I'm smarter. I'm really going to be that much closer to being right and having a good product to sell people, but man, I didn't want to start from scratch. So there's a lot of fear involved in it. There's a lot of, I covered some of those, but there's a lot of fear that I see right now in a lot of existing startups in New Brunswick where they're afraid to admit that what they're working on doesn't work. There are a lot of companies out there right now who've been startups for 3, 4, 5, 6 years and won't admit it to themselves. They can't admit it to their families, their investors. And so instead of saying, I was wrong, and fearing that people are going to think poorly of them, which they're not, actually some will, it's not as scary somehow in your head to say, I'm fighting the good fight, I'm going to win. There's nothing scary about that. You look like a hero, you feel like a hero. But in reality, you should probably just stop. There's a lot of nodding and people comparing notes. Admitting you're wrong is not something people do. People love to. I came with an example this morning. You know how everybody will think, is everybody crazy but me? No. It's usually the exact opposite. They know something that you're not considering. You're not a genius. Otherwise, everybody is a genius and everyone would be right. Kind of right? That's how that logic kind of plays out. So there's a lot of ways to catch yourself if you're being fearful in your startups, and you're going to recognize this probably in a lot of people. Not seeking answers to critical unknowns that you don't know, you don't have answers for yet. If you are avoiding finding out the answer to something that you absolutely have to know, you can make a million excuses, but the reality is you are hiding because you're scared to find out, or you're scared to be rejected. Are you researching something to death? Yeah, I know I've got this great idea, but I need to find out how many widgets are made in Singapore in the fall, and then I'll be ready. So many startups do that, and it is fear. You are rationalizing something to yourself to say, this makes sense, I need to do that first before going out and doing the hard things. It needs this one more feature. I can't show it to anybody until it does this one more thing. You're lying to yourself. You can usually go out with your half-baked idea. No one will notice. Most people won't care. You just need to go out and put it in front of people. And the big one, if you have not changed your idea, you're still working on the original idea with maybe a minor tweak, I guarantee you're hiding. You haven't shown enough customers what you're working on who will correct you and show you that you're in fact wrong. What are the chances that the first idea that you're working on is actually correct? It's pretty low. It's pretty low. Are you alone? How many people come to ConnectionWorks and sit in a corner, Mark, and never talk about what they're doing because they're scared to show somebody? All the time, right? And postponing, which is kind of a bunch of those. Everybody has not seen season 1 of Game of Thrones yet, or Game of Thrones, House of Cards yet, right? Okay. I have a spoiler. These aren't particularly ideas from R17, so but I want to cover some other bases that really kind of stick out to me in startups I'm seeing. You need to survive to build the next one. The chances of your first startup being a huge success are close to nothing as well. You need to learn. You need to figure some stuff out. You need to figure out who you are, find out what your strengths are, and kind of build systems to play to your strengths and minimize what your not character faults, but what your weaknesses are. Customers and sales can fix a lot of problems that if you don't have customers and sales, you may invent for yourself. If you can start your company with a product or a service that someone will pay you money for, that irons out a lot of problems. Because all of a sudden you've got someone on board to what you're selling, to what your product is. You're actually helping someone who will be there and tell you, oh, you're doing that? I'm not buying that. Oh, really you're not buying that? I was going to spend 3 years developing this feature. No, that's useless. I got something else that does that, and it's not worth the money. If I get that for $20, I'm not going to pay you $10,000 a month. There's a lot of entrepreneurs who I run into who will say, I can't come up with a good idea. I don't have a good idea. I want to be an entrepreneur. I can't think of a good idea. And the best way that you can come up with a good idea, honestly, is by brainstorming on trying to create 100 bad ones. Because what you think is a bad idea is probably a good idea to somebody somewhere. And it just gets the creative juices flowing. One of those ideas is probably going to be pretty good. So you're perhaps just not open to the possibility that you can have more than one good idea. I mean, you're a human being. You've probably done some genius thing at some point in your life so far. You will come up with a better idea. So that is the end of R17. What I have another presentation which is basically everything I learned from R17, but what I would do differently in my next startup based on kind of this stuff and other things that I see from existing startups. So would anyone like to ask some questions just based on that first part? you're making excuses to yourself. You're rationalizing all these things. None of these things have to do, except not seeking answers on them. Mostly have to do with not wanting to expose yourself and your idea to other people. You're not going to find 10 mentors this week and present them with the full baby. Here's everything. What do you see wrong here? It's about not going to find 20 potential customers on LinkedIn this week because honestly you're scared to death to talk to the chief technical officer of some gigantic company. Those are intimidating things. So if you're avoiding, if you're hiding, these are typically excuses that you will make to yourself. That's all it really is. Mark?
Just to add to that, when that slide came up, Joanne and I laughed. We said, we work with entrepreneurs all the time. It's either one extreme or the other. You have somebody who will be in the basement and no research for 3 years.
Yep.
And then you'll have somebody at the other extreme that won't do any research.
Yeah.
So we saw that as kind of a balance.
Yeah. But the two things that those have in common is they're not talking to customers and mentors. They're not exposing their idea to the people they most need to expose the idea to. It's ludicrous. It's totally ludicrous. First of all, your idea probably stinks in some form or fashion. There's something wrong with it you haven't thought through, something that's not going to work. And by talking to people, you will eventually figure out how to do that. Whatever that is, you'll find out what it is. People are very happy to point out, that's crazy. Very happy to do it. I mean, they don't mean anything by it, and you shouldn't have your feelings hurt by it in any way. But no one's going to steal your idea because nobody cares. Whatever my great idea, I could tell you right now, but nobody here has related to it because, for whatever reason, you have no attachment to it. I happen to believe it works because I've had some sort of experience and talked to somebody, and you haven't had this experience, so you probably think that guy is crazy. That's not going to work. So no one's going to steal your idea. And to put not too fine a point on it, an idea is completely worthless unless it's backed up with sales traction. Well, not sales traction, but traction of some form. Do you have customers coming to you begging you for this product? Guess what? That idea is actually pretty useful. Will someone who didn't come up with the idea go find 100 customers? They're probably not going to do it. They're not that personally invested in the idea or whatever the journey is that brought you to that point. Some people think that they've got a patentable idea. Who cares? If you're a startup and file a patent, that would cost you $10,000 or $15,000. And if I come in afterwards and I actually did steal your idea and you got a patent on it, you can't fight me because now you're out of money. You're not going to go through $100,000. You don't have $100,000 to fight me in court, do you? But wait a second. You took the idea and you've got a bunch of customers. I took the idea. I don't have any customers. The guy with the customers and the guy with the idea and customers is going to beat a guy who went and stole your idea and had a patent. So focus on customers. Customers, customers, customers.
When pitching your ideas, how do you walk the fine line between appearing to be too naive and to be overconfident?
Anyone that you're pitching to knows, especially if you're a first-time entrepreneur, they know you don't know what you're doing. So I don't think there's a need for you to try to project confidence. So don't go in trying to appear overconfident. If you go and say, I need help. Here's my idea, I need some help. If you're talking to an investor for the first time and ask for money, you're not going to get money. You get plenty of advice. If you want advice, ask for money. If you want money, ask for advice. So when you go in and you say, I've got this idea, I think I got something. What should I do? You're laying it bare. You're saying, I'm not crazy enough to think I have all the answers. You can probably help me figure some of this out. And if you then go and do those things and try to figure it out, investor or anybody is way more likely to say, please come back, I will help you again. If you do go in and someone gives you some advice and the shields go up and you don't hear them, and then you go back to them 6 months from then and they ask you, how did you make out looking for customers? Oh, I didn't do that. They're not going to pay you any time because you're uncoachable and you're probably a fool. So how do you walk the line? Just be honest. I'm a first timer. I'm a second timer. I'm a third timer. I have an idea. I'm a third time entrepreneur, but I've got this idea for this market I don't know anything about. Can you help me? Mark.
You mentioned coachability there.
Yeah.
How important do you think that is for an entrepreneur?
Absolutely number one. No one cares what your idea is. If you take an idea and people are making suggestions to you and you're open to them and you go and address those things, you will discover some chink in the armor and you will change what you're doing. That is the road to success. Not being open to the idea that you might be wrong, no one's going to want to help you because they know you're not right. You're human. It's impossible to be right the first time, unless you're Einstein. And even he worked at it. I was at the Propel ICT selection camp for the last cohort that went through, and there was a applicant from here whose idea nobody was any good. Nobody thought it was any good at all. But this person was extremely good at marketing, has a great background. And I took, we were in this session afterwards voting who likes this company, who likes this founder. And I fought to get a founder in whose idea I didn't particularly believe in, but was very open to the idea that they could be wrong. So that person was willing to explore reality to find out how to move the business idea forward to something that will actually sell and be a success. And that person is now in the program, and I think is going to do extremely, extremely well. Being a marketer, I think, is more. That person, I think, is more based in reality and kind of knows how fickle the market can be. And they're going to have to find a message that resonates with somebody, like I guess, kind of doing a mind meld with someone. Like you kind of get the idea that this person will listen to what other people say and move forward. Yes?
Who is your mentor?
I'm embarrassed to say I don't really have a mentor right now.
Who was your...
In Launch 36, his name is Keith, and I cannot remember his last name for the life of me, but he's the co-owner of PQA. Keith McIntosh. The first question he asked me was exactly what was wrong with R17. He said, how are you going to distribute this idea to 10,000 people? And I said, oh, we're going to buy AdWords. So on Google, when people are searching for this, we're going to do that. We got that handled. And he said, geez, I don't know. Like, is there any sort of complimentary service that you could become a partner of so that their customers get exposure to what you're working on? And I just shields up, didn't listen, and came back to him afterwards. A couple months after I R17, I said, Keith, you were so right. I'm such a fool. I didn't listen to a word you said. Please do what you did with me, and if people aren't listening, just give them a bonk on the head, because you were absolutely right. Anything else? Anybody? Sir?
Was enterprise your focus for sales with those big companies, and how did that compare to some of the other deals you maybe landed?
We were not looking to do enterprise at all. We were hoping to sell a small analytics package. It was going to cost $50 a month, $60 a month. It was just a total fluke that this huge enterprise customer happened to be there and was receptive to what we were talking about. So it was a wide open door. I just pounced on it. Enterprise sales can be extremely, extremely difficult, and speaking of, trying to make yourself vulnerable and admitting what you don't know, why getting a huge enterprise customer, I didn't reach out to everybody I knew and say, do you know anything about selling to an enterprise? Anybody? And grabbing that person and say, tell me what I'm supposed to be doing? I didn't do that. Like, how stupid is that, right? But my ego or whatever was in the way. I wasn't thinking straight. I needed to project strength. I know what I'm doing. I'm selling to this big customer. I got this far. I don't need help. Foolish. I absolutely needed help. I needed all the help I could get my hands on. Yes.
So you said coachability is the number one trait.
I think so. That's a good question. I don't know. I don't know. It's being receptive to other people is. My God, what else is there? I don't know. I don't have an answer for you. I'm not sure. I really don't. Finding the first one is so rare. I guess we never get a chance to work on what number 2 and number 3 are. Yes.
So about the researching to death and people just dithering and never going to look for customers.
Yeah.
What happens if you go with something that's not, it's not like complete, it's not half baked, but it's definitely not complete, and you go and you do land a customer and they are receptive.
Yeah.
And then you're scrambling.
I don't think you're scrambling. I don't think you're scrambling at all. Yeah, that is the best possible world. SiteFlow, Zip Links in St. John, which is now SiteFlow, I think. Is that right, Mark? Or is that the product name? So he had, I think, literally diagrams. Here's what I'm trying to build. And he went to a company, and they said, wow, we need that. And he said, will you pay me to work on it? And they said, yes. So in that case, he had identified a pain that was so deep, someone willing to give them money. I think in a lot of cases, if you're working on a product that everybody has and you're just one of the flock, that's probably not going to go anywhere if you show up with nothing. But I would argue you probably shouldn't be working on that at all. You know what I mean? Like, if you don't have something unique to offer and you're going in with something half-baked, I don't think anyone's going to care. So that for you, that might be just a learning experience. Okay, my product's not unique enough. I need to go work on something. That's an immense value to you too, right? And you know what? That one customer that you picked out and went to, I don't think you should be embarrassed because they're not going to remember you the second you walk out the door. They're not going to think, I don't want to see that guy in 3 months. He won't remember you. Oh, you were here 3 months ago? I don't remember that. Oh, okay, yeah, show me that thing again. Oh, yeah, I remember that. Oh, you worked on it. That's good. Oh, yeah, okay, yeah, we could use that now. Yeah.
So you just be upfront first time?
Why not be upfront? I don't think you have anything to lose. If someone doesn't want to talk to you because you're new, you probably don't want to talk to the guy anyway. Okay? Good. All right, I'm going to go to the next one. So the next one is going to be what I would do if I were starting a new company. I would do everything in the exact opposite fashion. I would market first, and I would build a product absolutely last. This picture is it's kind of the default that comes with the Keynote doohickey, the framework for building a thing. But usually I change them. But I saw that this really speaks to me. This says to me, here's what maritime Canadian tech startups look like. They're working in earnest in the wilderness, and there's nobody else around. There's no customers around. There's no one to talk to. This is what we do in Atlantic Canada. Well, the Maritimes. So St. John, Fredericton, Moncton, that's what we do. I don't know about Newfoundland. I'd like to talk to some people in Newfoundland. I think they have a unique position where they're sort of isolated by a land link to the rest of the country. I think maybe they're much better at reaching out to people because that's what they kind of have to do. But definitely the Maritimes. So if there's a startup right now and it comes into a place like ConnectionWorks or Planet Hatch in Fredericton, whatever Venture Garage is it in Moncton? So and here, so what typically happens is they get thrown into a lean startup methodology, which basically means go talk to a bunch of customers, which you've heard ad nauseum today. There's also a primary message there, and that is that the biggest risk for any startup is building a product that nobody wants. Because you could spend 2 or 3 years doing that. And hence, the motto of the Lean Startup movement is get out of the building. So don't talk to the developer next to you. They don't know anything. Go talk to a customer. But, and I think this is what Mark Green's going to like, I think there's a huge assumption in there that is either conveniently ignored by people following it, or it's just a blind spot. And that is that you can actually reach real potential customers to talk to. Okay? Startups here, get out of the building, to me, I think, means get on the internet. If you're selling stuff over the internet, or you get a tech product, your potential customers are on the internet. So startups here, they talk to their friends, they talk to their families, they talk to a couple business guys in town, they'll talk to a couple mentors, maybe get the idea that their startup product is good, and start working on it. We are not, by any means, your customers, and you need to get on the internet to talk to them. Go find out where they are and talk to them. The idea being, if you can reach customers to talk to, if you can get out of the building and talk to people, you can also learn from them, and most importantly, when you're ready, you can launch to them. So here's a current life cycle of a startup. They have one idea, and it's very tightly held onto. When they're doing customer development, what they're trying to figure out is, okay, what do I need to do to change my current idea to make it work? They're not figuring out how do I need to change this idea to something else to make it work. And there's a huge difference there. They have very low market access. Nobody that I know in Atlantic Canada has 50,000 people on Twitter hanging on to their every word, 50,000 subscribers to the newsletter so that they can say, hey, I'm working on this, what do you guys think? And get that immediate feedback. That is something you really need, I think, to start with, to try to find someone who will pay attention to what you're talking about. They will go through the maximum amount of effort. They will throw themselves into this idea for 2 or 3 years. They might ask their friends and family for investment money. They will kill themselves basically working night and day, and then they will discover this is not working. They're running out of money. They have to lay off the developers that they convinced this was a good idea. They will struggle for 6 months, a year, 2 months, trying to flounder, find something, anything, and then hopefully the startup dies. And then they never, ever come back. Maritime startup founders get chewed up. They burn out. And they don't come back because we put so much effort and we've burned our savings probably. We've pissed off our friends and family with the money they gave us to work on this idea, which doesn't work out. And we're so burned out that we're done. But that entrepreneur is extremely valuable because they've learned so much in that first go. It's a sin, honestly, how they're sort of left in the cold going forward. It's not a very efficient way to do things. What I would like to see, and this is the approach I would take next time, is come up with many, many, many ideas that are very loosely held, that are very lightly abandoned. Okay? And I would test them for having actual market access. So my first idea, I don't know, widgets one, I say, I think that I could reach the customers for this on this website. I think my unique value proposition is this. I would go and test it. Does anybody care? No. Rats. That's not working. Do I need to tweak it a little bit? Yes or no? If not, go to the next idea. I think you can very lightly validate your ideas if you reach out directly to the market and see if you can find someone who cares. It eats up a lot less money and it eats up a lot less time. And I think you could do it at night. I think you could have your day job and continue to work on this until you find something that hits, which I think plays very well with Atlantic Canadians, because generally we have a pretty good idea, a pretty good job, and if we throw that away working on a startup that's not going to work because we're held on to that first idea so much that when it ends, you might not be able to go back. And there's not a robust job market here, so that might not be the smartest idea. I think this is a very low-risk way to validate your ideas, and then eventually find one that does work. So I would ask you, like, which lifestyle makes the most sense? Do you want to have one idea that's probably wrong, burn yourself out on it, or lightly test a bunch of ideas and find one that works? You know, in poker, winning strategy is to be in on every hand, but assess your odds in every hand. And you wait until the odds are in your favor because you're counting cards or whatever it is, poker guys. I don't know anything about it. But when the odds are in your favor, then you bet. You bet big. If you're playing 21, you literally have to stay in the game long enough to win. The second you run out of money, you're done and you've lost. So staying in the game much longer and making big bets when they're in your favor, I think makes a lot of sense. So essentially, marketing first. And there's a couple of things, and I'm on the last couple slides here, folks. One of the biggest killers of startups is the timing. There are lots of startups out there with really good ideas, but it's at the wrong time. VidCruiter in Moncton struggled for years and years and years. Was going nowhere, doing nothing. And then I think it was 2 years after he launched, and then he ended up being indexed in the website. So when people started looking for video recruiting, he came up. His business went crazy. And now he's a huge success. So it was all about the time. Yeah, there's a fella at IDEO, which is an idea incubator company in California. And he went through and looked through his wild portfolios of companies made by really smart guys and had tons of money stuck behind them. And what he found was the biggest thing that led to the success of the companies was the timing. If you look at Uber and Airbnb, who are sort of poster children now, if those ideas had come out in the 80s when everybody had a lot of money and the economy was great, probably wouldn't have taken off. But those ideas launched in the 2010s, where the economy's kind of shaky, or used to wanting like 2 or 3 jobs, could use the extra money. People were very receptive to those ideas, and it went crazy. And they will tell you the timing had a lot to do with it. It also really forces you, if you're going to go and reach out to a market and spend time and money marketing to folks, it really blows away a lot of pixie dust that you have in your plan that you don't see as pixie dust. You're kind of glossing it over in your head. You have to think very critically about who is my customer, where do I think they hang out, what do I think my unique value proposition is to these folks, so that you can really attract them. You have to do that hard exercise, which is something a lot of people do not do. And most critically, I think up front you can find out if anybody cares. This is one of the scariest things I think in the world. When people start up, they don't want to know if anybody cares yet. They're too scared to find out because it's their one baby. It's their one idea. They're betting everything on it. If I find out that my idea is ugly and nobody wants it, I'm finished. I've got nothing else. And more important than that, honestly, I believe, do enough people care? That's really the crux of it, isn't it? If you come up with an idea and 100 people like it, that sounds really good. But if you're selling it for $5, the market all of a sudden isn't big enough for you to pursue that idea. And a lot of people will never find that out. Not till it's too late. So, by marketing first, I think it really can force you to come to a conclusion. Do I need to stop what I'm doing and move on to another idea? And if you're not heavily invested in it, who cares? You spent $500, you spent a month after work, who cares? You've lost nothing. You haven't spent 3 years developing a product and told your friends and family it's going to be the next greatest. And if you do happen to find a market, and this is what we don't do here, if you find a market, you've got people to talk to. You've got a captive audience who you can talk to about your idea and can give you feedback, and that's what you most critically need. And then they can actually help you and guide you to creating a startup that will be great. Quick lifestyle. So the first idea, no one cares. Okay, move on to the next one. The market sort of likes it, but they don't kind of get it yet. Probably a good indication that the timing's not right. Idea 5. Okay, you get some hints you're onto something. Like you ran an ad and people showed up in 3 hours. You probably got something, but what is it? But now you've got people you can talk to. If you're capturing like an email address or a phone number, you can call those people. Why did you land on my website? Oh, you need that. Oh, I never thought of that. Okay, cool. You call the next person. Tell you the same story. Oh, there's a pattern. You're learning. And you're learning pretty until eventually you get to whatever the next idea is. You found out you needed to reposition the product a little bit, and then it goes crazy. So step 0, and I'm still kind of working on the acronym, Rapid Market Access Validation Sprints. Rapidly go through, burn those ideas, burn them up. You can come up with a good idea. You can come up with 100 bad ideas. You can come up with 10 good ideas somewhere. You will do it. You just have to burn through them fast enough to find the one that's going to work and throw yourself at that as much as you can. And I think somewhere that's going to make Mavericks. Market access, MAV, sprints with an R, something in there anyway. So that's it. That's it for that one.
I'd like to know your thoughts on crowdfunding
Yeah.
as a platform to solving the problem of idea validation and product development. Because it seems to me you can almost do both simultaneously on a crowdfunding platform. If you don't get enough money, it means the idea
Stinks. Yeah. That's really good. I hadn't thought of that as an avenue for testing, but that's a really good one. There is there does seem that the guys who are doing Kickstarters need to put into the product, so it might be something you have to weigh. Like for this idea, do I need to spend $1,000 creating a a product video to show what it does, or stuff like that? So I think you play it by ear, but I love the idea of what you're saying is it's a test. If no one's interested, I shouldn't be working on this. That's absolutely fabulous. I think that's a great idea.
I like that your focus is on customers rather than investors, though, throughout this. I appreciate that.
I skipped over a thought on that, but I'll give it to you. In Atlantic Canada, there are so few investors that you're really beholden to them. So if you don't go in with sales traction, you're a beggar, and you are going to probably accept any terms that they offer you. If you've got sales and traction and customers and people demanding your product, you're in the driver's seat. And then you may decide you don't need investment at that point. If you've got people throwing money at you, shut up, take my money. It gives you options, right? The investors around here are generally pretty cool. They're pretty nice folks. But because there's not a lot of them, there doesn't seem to be as much pressure for them to close a deal quick. And so a lot of startup founders, I find, the deals get dragged out. And so by the time they raise the, whatever, $100,000 they need, by the time it gets dragged out, it's like, okay, they got the 100,000, but geez, now that it's been dragged out 6 months, we really could have used that 6 months of funding. I guess I kind of need $150,000, but you're behind time-wise. So I think if you can accelerate the deal by saying, I've got traction and the next person writes me a check on the terms I want, I'm going to go with them, that gives you a lot of power. A lot of power. Is everyone going to go try to market first?
Raise your hand.
I beg you. And if you are, I forgot to mention this, but if you are part of an accelerator or have access to people who want to do something really different in the acceleration space, because everybody is trying to run a Propel Launch 36 these days, I would beg you to find 10 smart entrepreneurs who would like to go out and validate their next 10 ideas with the market, and then jump on the one that actually has some legs. I would beg you to do that. I think that's absolutely brilliant. Why would you expect, why would you invest in 10 entrepreneurs whose ideas might not work versus 10 who are going to go find the idea that does work and prove it? Mark? Anyway, any last questions, anybody? No?
Thanks for that mind-blowing talk. That was great. I think everyone was really
It's my pleasure.
eye-opened and
I'm currently making myself very open to quick sessions with anybody who would like some help, would like to expose what it is they're working on, and have someone just say, I would maybe try to find out more about this, find out more about that. I'm opening myself for mentor hours. So like the first meeting would be like 20 minutes or 30 minutes, and that's with a startup entrepreneur or someone who's trying to grow a product out of an existing company or expand a market or whatever. And then if there's something there between us and we can work together, then there would be more time afterwards, like for hour sessions, et cetera, et cetera. So if that's something that's of any interest to you, I would be very open to talk to you. Love to help you.
well,
Okay.
thanks so much, Steve.
Pleasure.